Yo, what's up everybody? Long time no see. Honestly, it feels like forever ago that I was playing POE, but it's only even been a couple months, which is crazy if you think about it. But I'm definitely happy to be back for this new league because it's gonna be a fantastic league for Ice Spear and Freezing Pulse Totems. So this is going to be like a mini boss killing league in a sense because of the league mechanic. It sort of has like mini bosses that you kind of go into an arena and you kind of place your totems down in the middle of the arena and just absolutely melt everything. You're going to sit in the back and just enjoy your stress-free loot farm. And also it's going to let you learn the league mechanic really easily, I feel, and faster than others, which is pretty nice. That and with Sanctum going core and this build being the single best build for Sanctum in the game, that's pretty good as well. Lastly, of course, this build is an S tier boss killer on day 2 last league. I was doing Uber boss kill services for full parties, maybe sometimes 3 to 4 people, but only with like a 2 divine investment to start, which quickly turned into over 50 divines by the end of day 2. So I had a really successful league start. So yeah, I mean, overall, this is just one of the best boss killers out there. And even with like 5 divine or so in gear, your mapping speeds is also pretty solid. I mean, here's the thing, guys. I'm at a point in my PoE days where I have played probably close to like 18,000 hours of PoE. And the last 5 leagues or so, there's basically been no balance to skills. And once I started playing this build, I think maybe what, 3 or 4 leagues ago, everything else just feels bad. It feels like I'm screwing myself over not playing this build because of how good it is, and I enjoy playing it as well. And because of that, I haven't released that many like other build guides. I've really been focused on this one just because it is so good at everything. So I'm kind of stuck on it, and I'm a little bit disappointed that there just hasn't been balance changes, but it is what it is. The build is still going to be fantastic this league, and really that's all that matters. Anyways, though, that's enough of that. Before we go in any further, let's go ahead and talk about what we got for this guide. It's going to be a little bit different because the tree is actually the same, but there has been some gem and gear changes based off of my experience last league starting this. So at this point, I feel like the league start version of this build is the best it's ever been, and this guide is mainly going to focus on the changes I've made, so I won't go too in depth with like the tree or the build concept, anything like that. If you're interested, I will link my past videos if you want to go more in depth with that. But I will of course give you guys the full POB. We're going to talk about it as well, which is going to come with a also very in-depth note section on how to level the build up from level 1 all the way through the campaign as far as links and gems. I'm also going to link in the description the trade links for all items mentioned in the guide, the league start version and also the in-game version. And lastly, I'm going to give you guys my personal custom leveling loot filter made just for this build. So without any further ado, let's hop right in. Alright, here we are in Path of Building. So what I'm going to do is not really go over the concept of the build or the tree itself because I've had this build out for multiple leagues and not much has changed with the tree or the concept of the build. What has changed, and this is based off of my personal experience playing this build from league start to final build for multiple leagues in a row, I've learned a lot and it has improved since my last league and my last guide that I've put out for the league start version. So that's what we're going to talk about here. Now I will explain first, of course, how you kind of use this path building if you're new to my guides or this build in particular. If you go down here to the left side, you will see how to level up this build all the way from the start up to the final here, and you even have a couple versions of the final point. You have final with cheap clusters, you have final with your final clusters, right? So we'll go ahead and put in the cheap clusters here just to have that. And of course you have the Ascendancy. I'll talk about that briefly here. And of course is Hierophant. The first nodes that you're going to want to get is Pursuit of Faith. And basically we're getting in the totem stuff, right? Second is the Ritual of Awakening for just massive totem damage and also regen. The third thing that we're going to get is Conviction of Power, which is really good for leveling up. It does give you endurance charges, also power charges. Really nice to help out with tankiness and survivability. Last, we're going to get Divine Guidance when you're in maps. And this is good for more damage and again more tankiness, right? So that's the Ascendancy, pretty straightforward there. Again, the tree, if you are curious about the concept of the build or anything like that, I will link my previous guides for this League Start version, which goes over it a little bit more in depth in the video description. So let's talk about what has actually changed for the League Start version of this build. Let's go over to the items first, because that is actually where most of the changes has taken place. So last league we were doing a couple things. You could either do the Tyrann's Shiver staff, which was super cheap, just as kind of like a basic filler staff, which you still can do, I guess. I was telling people more so, instead of the staff there, to just get 2 wands, super cheap wands, like a couple chaos, and you could get something like maybe this right here, you know, just crit multi and cold spell skill gems. That's literally all you need. Like, don't invest too much in a wand. Literally a couple chaos, maybe craft on some spell damage, and you're fine, because we are going to switch to the Annihilating Light literally as soon as you can. And how you're going to do that is pretty important to understand, right? We need a ton of elemental resistances. As you can see there, you deal triple damage with elemental skills, insane damage, but 64% reduce elemental resistances, so you need a ton of elemental resistances in order to make this work. Personally, I even switched to this before I cap out my resistances, because it is just so much damage, and as you're progressing through the camp, or as you're progressing through maps, I don't mind dying a couple times in a map, or maybe just like one time in a map or something, or sometimes you don't even die in a map, but you have so much extra damage from this staff that you're just blasting through stuff. You can kill bosses incredibly quick, which actually, even though you might die a few times here and there, you're actually completing your map atlas progression faster because you have so much damage. So that's why we're going the Annihilating Staff. Now, if you really want to cap out your resistances before you get it, you can do that. I don't do that, but if you do want to do it, here's how you do it. There's a couple versions of this as well, but long story short, we're getting resistances on pretty much everything, and we're actually prioritizing that over life even. So like on your helmet here, we're getting literally triple resistances. Even if you can't get life on it, that's fine. Triple resistances as much as possible, maybe even craft on a life with a crafting bench, or you could get something like I did here. And how I actually roll these myself, because typically what I do is I will buy any type of helmet that has that enchant right there. Ice Spear has an additional projectile. I'll buy the base. It doesn't cost too much, maybe 20 chaos. Sometimes it's been up to a divine, but if you don't want to spend that money, doesn't even matter. Just get a base item and craft it yourself, or just buy it. But here's how I craft it. I'll buy the essences that have resistance, right? So like a fire resistance, cold, lightning, whatever, for maybe a couple chaos, for 5, 6, 7, 8 of them, right? You slam on those, get your triple resistances, or get 2 high resistances in life, and then craft on the other thing, right? Easy peasy, especially if you're crafting it yourself, because you buy the base with the Ice Spear. That Ice Spear has an additional projectile, is insane damage. So much damage. So it's one of the first things that you're going to prioritize after getting the staff. Okay, so that's the helmet, bunch of resistances, and then get the enchant there, Ice Spear, additional projectile. Body armor is of course the Soul Mantle. That has not changed. Buy that as soon as possible during the campaign. Like literally, if you're in Act 5 and you have a chaos or 2, buy it. It is worth it. On a 4 link, it's incredibly strong, Moving on to our gloves here. Now our gloves and one of our ring, or even maybe our boots, are semi-interchangeable with 1 stat. You do need 1 roll of dexterity, preferably like 35 or at least 40, as well as 2 high resistances. And you want to get that either on your gloves, your boots, or one of your rings, right? And then again, outside of that, just resistances. If you can get life, great. If not, that's fine too. Maybe you can just craft it on like I did here. Moving on to the boots, same thing. We're getting life, move speed. Move speed is important in this build, so try and get that 30%, because you do want to be moving fast, because you're a little bit squishy, right? So you want to move around pretty fast. I think for last league, for the past couple leagues, I haven't even had life on my boots until like I was doing uber bosses, right? So it's not that important. Get those resistances, get that move speed. If you can't, get a little life. For your amulet, we are going to go with a Kitrine amulet for that strength and dexterity. You do want to anoint Mark the Prey, which is over here. I'll show you. It's basically a free 10% more multiplier. Where is it? Yeah, they moved it up here. So marked enemies take 10% increased damage, so it's a free 10% more multiplier, and it's super cheap. A sepia, indigo, and black oil. very cheap, 10% more damage, fantastic. And also for the amulet, we're going to be going with cast speed and multi. Like, you don't need anything else on this. You don't need, the way I've kind of designed this, you don't need resistances, you don't need life, you literally just focus on cast speed and multi. Those are our two biggest multipliers for this build outside of projectiles, right? Extra projectiles for Ice Spear. And keep in mind, I've said Ice Spear a lot, but of course when you're mapping, you do use Freezing Pulse and you switch over to Ice Spear once you get to a boss. Personally, I actually use Ice Spear like permanently once I get the Annihilating Light, because you do so much damage, you clear pretty okay up until the boss, and then you just kill the boss, and it's really smooth. But until you get Annihilating Light, like, you just have a couple wands. I would use Freezing Pulse until you get to a boss, and then you just do a 1-for-1 gem swap, and it's super easy. I did want to mention that. So where were we? Yeah, so multi and cast speed, very important. If you have the craft right there on the bench that you get from June, the projectile speed and projectile damage, that is very good. Projectile speed is a pretty huge quality of life for this build, and of course projectile damage is pretty nice. Now, Kikazara ring is very important. It's for when you get Soul Mantle, okay? That's what's very important here, because once you get the Kikazara ring, you can pretty much start using Soul Mantle. I would not start using Soul Mantle until you get a Kikazara ring. Typically what I do when I level up is I actually buy 2 Kikazara rings for like 1 to 2 chaos each, and then I'll buy a Soul Mantle and 4-link it. And I'm usually done with that by act, 8 or so, or maybe like when you first get into maps, tier 1 or 2 maps, you can get that combo done pretty quick. And the reason we're doing that is, of course, because inflicts a random hex on you when your totems die, and it's very bad, right? So that's very, very bad. You're going to get a ton of curses on you. You need to be able to have curse reduction, so reduce effect of curses on you, right? So that's how you have that right there, 70%. How we're getting to 70% is we're using the caster modifier there, the, what is it called, imbued catalyst, and we're getting that up to 20%, and that gets us up to that 72% curse effectiveness. But you don't actually need that if you're going with 2 Kikazara rings, and that's literally, like I said, it's just to start. You're going to use this for maybe until you're like level 80, and you're going to switch off of it. But that's how you start that early on. Again, I'm going to say it, do not use Soul Mantle until you have at least 1, probably 2 Kikazara rings, but that's super cheap. You can get it pretty quick. So once you have that, and you need 100% curse effectiveness reduction, keep that in mind. That's the reason you're doing that, okay? Once you have that 100%, you're chilling and you're good. Those curses don't bother you. Moving on to our second ring, same concept here, a ton of resistances, craft on life if you can, super easy. The belt here, we're actually going with a Stygian Vise. It's cheap. It doesn't matter the roll. You don't need a big crazy roll or anything like that. Get the cheapest one that you can find, and we're gonna put in abyssal jewels like this, just life and resistances. You're getting the vibe here, just resistances. If you can't afford, I don't know if this is going to be crazy expensive this league. It's usually like 2 chaos, 3 chaos, but for whatever reason, if it's more expensive this league, literally just get a belt with a bunch of resistances and maybe a little life. Super easy. Okay, moving on to, I'll just go through our flasks really quick because they're pretty basic. Quicksilver flask, try and get one with some extra move speed. Quartz flask is important so we can move around. We are a little squishy, so it does help. Notice on here that we do have a tier 1 cast speed during flask effect roll. That is very big. It gets you up to, I think, 18%, maybe 17% cast speed during flask effect. And like I said, multi and cast speed is one of our best stats for the build, so getting that on one of your flasks is very important. Getting an enduring eternal mana flask, I think I messed that up a little bit. It should be enduring eternal mana flask. Excuse me, is what you want to get, so you can constantly have mana flowing and you can be putting up your totems pretty seamlessly. From there, we just have a diamond flask. Really doesn't even matter what you have on the rolls here. Just get a diamond flask, maybe even like duration or charge recovery, something like that, just to have it last longer. And lastly, we have a divine flask, and this one is going to be with corrupting blood immunity. So if you do have corrupting blood, you just pop that and you're good to go. Moving on to our clusters. This is where our final cheap clusters are going to be. If you come down here, you can do final with the final clusters. Just note that. So going here to socket 1. Let's actually talk about these first, the ones down here. You do need a few of these. If you have the 70%, like I said, you need to get 100% total. So in that case, you would just want one of these, right? So you would get 100%, 30% reduced curse effectiveness on you and some resistances. If you don't have the Kikuzawa ring, which I'll show in a second, there's a better ring that we're going to want to get. You do need to have multiple of these, right? You want to have up to 100%. So like, for example, I have here 30, 30, 30, that's 90. And I actually have, I think, another one somewhere else. I'm getting another 10%. You can also get the, let's show you on the calculations, or maybe it's in configuration. Yeah, here we go. So your pantheons, right? We're going to want to get Brine King for the freeze immunity. But here's the important one. Soul of Yugal. You and your minion, I'm sorry, 30% reduced curse effectiveness on you. And you get that by killing Verhesh. So that is going to be a free 30% curse effectiveness on you. That combined with these three right here is going to give you enough curse effectiveness to not need a Kikuzaru, and you're chilling with the spider, with the soul mantle, right? The other jewels that you're going to want to get once you get that 100% is going to be something like this. I have two examples. Some multi. You can either be just flat crit multi with cold skills, crit multi with elemental skills, something like that, and cold damage. Or you can get something like this one, again, multi and maybe a little bit of cast speed, right? A couple options. These are usually relatively cheap, maybe like 5 chaos, right? So for our clusters, these are our cheap cluster jewels. Your large cluster, you're going to want something like this with prismatic heart. Disorienting display is pretty nice as well, but at least that prismatic heart to get you that elemental resistances. And it does want to be on an elemental or a cold damage base cluster. Moving on to our two medium clusters, this is very important. Sleepless Sentries, and you can even craft this yourself. Just buy a base cluster jewel for totems and then craft it yourself with alterations. Sleepless Sentries is you have Onslaught if you've summoned a totem recently, so incredibly good for cast speed and also move speed. The second one here is Repeater. It's going to be projectile damage and attack and cast speed, same concept. Buy the base, craft it yourself with alterations. Super easy on that. And that's the league start setup of this. This is probably literally going to cost you maybe 1 divine, probably not even 1 divine, to get all of this going. And that's for 8.3 million DPS. That's literally enough to clear the whole game. You'll do it like a little bit slower once you do uber bosses, but you can do uber bosses with this damage, no problem. Right? And that's on day 1 or day 2 if you're kind of pushing it. Like for myself, I kill uber bosses on day 1.5 with this exact setup. So going on to right here with the Anathema ring, like I said earlier, there's a better ring choice than Kikuzaru. You want to replace it as soon as you can once you have enough curse reduction, and you're going to want to go with the Anathema. The Anathema is crazy. Your curse limit is equal to your maximum power charges. We have 4 power charges consistently because of our Ascendancy, so that means we get 4 curses active at all times. That is crazy damage. So let's keep in mind here. So let's go back to the league start setup. So 8.3 is like the base, right? So we're going to go to the Anathema ring. We're also going to go over to skills because your skills do change. We're going to go final setup with Anathema, and here's what changes. These are your now 4 curses that you're going to have. You start off with just Sniper's Mark when you don't have Anathema, but once you have Anathema, you're going to add on Frostbite, Elemental Weakness, and Punishment. Now we go up to 16.3 million DPS. Crazy. I think that's also, I've added in a 6 link. I think in that other setup I had a 5 link. Excuse me. So just to make it equal here, we go from 8.3 to 12.7, right? That is a huge jump for that ring. So the ring is very important. I'll go ahead and add that 6 link on there, and then we'll go back to our items here. And that is literally the only change for this next step. The step after that is getting all of your clusters, and we'll go to the tree here to show you what the correct clusters are. You want Blanketed Snow for damage penetration, you want Disorienting Display, and you also want Prismatic Heart. For your medium, your first medium, you want Repeater, as well as Eye to Eye, ton of damage. And for your other medium, your total one, you want Sleepless Sentries, and also we're adding Ancestral Echo for a also ton of damage. So those are your final clusters there. Let's go talk about skills. Pretty straightforward. I'm not going to talk about it too much because it's basically the same thing as the last league. I have changed a couple things though, so I did want to mention it to you guys. The 6 link setup is the exact same. The way I've put this here is in order of importance. Ice Spear, crit damage, GMP. GMP is absolutely huge. Replace your lesser multiple projectiles right away once you get this. For Ice Spear itself, if you're leveling with Freezing Pulse, it's probably better to go ahead and just use lesser multiple projectiles and then do greater multiple projectiles when you get to maps or something, when you actually have the Soul Mantle chest piece. Multiple Totems is your 4th link, Added Cold is your 5th link, and Hypothermia is your 6th link. Flame Dash, Unbound Ailments, Cold Snap, Bone Chill. This is for bosses. You're going to throw down a Cold Snap, and it makes it take a lot more cold damage. So really good for bosses there as a debuff. For our aura, we're running Run Aura, which is Zealotry, and we're also using Eternal Blessing, which lets us keep all of our mana unreserved, which is great because we do have Mind Over Matter, so it makes us quite a bit more tanky, This is the most important 2 links right here, Portal and Cast on Death, and we got to have a conversation, my friends. It is okay to die. Here's my opinion on stuff. As long as you're not taking all 6 portals in a map, it literally does not matter if you're dying, because we are killing the boss and we are progressing faster than people that are going through the Atlas and your maps slower but never dying. I promise you. A lot of people are scared and think the build's poopy because you die a lot. Who cares if you die? If you're killing all the bosses super easy and you're progressing faster than those that are going a lot slower but never dying, right? It's a change in mentality. I've gotten there. I don't care about dying at all. I've never died probably more than 3 times a map, and that's in like super in-game crazy maps, right? Just leveling up, you might die 1 or 2 times in a map. Who cares? As long as you have this setup, Cast on Death Portal, you're back in the action instantly, and you're going to kill the boss and you're moving on to the next map. So I really wanted to make a point of that because I get a lot of comments about how not tanky and squishy the build is. Who cares? We're doing so much damage that we're chilling, friends. Okay, so moving on to our links here. I already talked about these are our curses that we're getting with Anathema Ring. We do have a Lightning Golem. Now that's once you get a 6 link staff. If you only have a 5 link staff, don't worry about the Lightning Golem. It's not a whole bunch of extra damage. Look at that, you can see it's not that much. But if you do get the 6 link, that is where your Lightning Golem goes. In our last 4 link here, we have Arcane Cloak, Increased Duration, Arcane Surge. You do want to put the Arcane Cloak on your left click. So every time you're moving around, it's going to be auto casting for you. Very, very good. A ton of damage and a little bit of tankiness with a shield. Now, I have 2 portals that you might notice because I actually self-cast this portal whenever I want to get out of the map. And the other one is for when you die, right? So that's why I have that. That is the final gym setup. That is the final items. Pretty sure I talked about all the items. Let's just confirm. I'll delete this in-game setup because that's not correct. I'll even do that right now. Apologies. In-game, delete. There we go. So yeah, League start with Anathema. Final with clusters, perfect. All the skills was perfect. It's the same concept up here. You can see League start setup. And then you can see League start with Anathema, right? Okay, cool. Let's go over to the notes. I'll just show you this briefly. This is exactly how you level up this build. I've gone through and color-coded everything to make it as easy as possible for you guys on how to level up the build, what gyms you want to get in order, and I mean, it's super easy as long as you follow this. And also keep in mind that I do have a leveling loot filter for this specifically. That's going to be linked in the description below, and it's going to match like all of these colors that you're going to get. So it'll highlight a blue, green, green weapon for you on the ground, and you'll know that, okay, that's perfect. That's exactly what I need, right? It'll highlight once you get down to your 4 links down here. Where's the 4 links? So it'll highlight a red, blue, blue, green. And you're like, bam, that's perfect. It shoots a big old blue light up into the sky, and you're like, okay, I gotta get that. That's my first 4 link, and it tells you it's just super easy to level up that way, right? And I use this myself. I actually am going to use this myself tomorrow or today when the league starts. So I think it's really helpful, and I hope it helps you guys out too. Okay, I think that is pretty much it for the POB. I am going to have also the trade links for this build. That is going to be linked in the description below. In fact, I can show you guys what that looks like. One second, let me drag it up here. I actually have to, what the heck? I have to log into POE. Hold on 1 second. All right, here we go. Bringing that up, we have, you know what, this is not accurate. I'll put it in there, but I'll show you guys how to use it, right? So it's better POE trading. I'm sure you guys have seen this with my guides. I'll just give you an example. You come down here and you want to click, where is it? Import folder. You click that. You go to the link that I have in the description. It's going to be like a pastebin type link, right? Don't copy the actual link. You actually want to go into the website and copy that whole big, like, text, right? And you're going to copy that and you're going to come and you're going to paste it in here. You're going to hit save and it's going to look like this. You're going to want to drop it down and you can click on all the links here to take you exactly to the right piece of gear. Do note that how I like kind of arrange these is it's the most important pieces that you want to buy first to last, right? So do that. This is fantastic. Like I said, I'm going to use this myself when I start this character today. And it's hopefully really helpful for you guys. Like I said as well, I am playing this build for my League Start character. I am going to be streaming this for the weekend quite a bit. So if you guys are curious how to level it up, how to progress to end game, how to do bosses, all that good stuff, definitely check it out. It should be a good time. I think this build, like I said, is going to be fantastic for the league mechanic. Being kind of like a mini boss type situation, so I'm really looking forward to that, and I hope this build is enjoyable for you guys. I hope you have a great time with it, and I hope it leads you to a very successful league start. That's all I got on this one, guys. I will be releasing a like day 2 video on Sunday night, which is where I have taken my build to at that point. So if you're interested and you're not subscribed already, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you can be alerted when that video comes out. And that's all I got for this one, guys. I'll catch y'all in the next video.